Right, we are so grateful to have Norma back with us tonight. Norma Salway is a retired teacher and a writer and a presenter on many topics. She's the author of The Attic in Me, which she spoke to us about last year. Probably most of you were there. If you missed it, you missed a great program. You can still get the book on Amazon.
Or right through the publisher, just right books, or from me.
Or from her. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you once again for inviting me back. This is, for me, it's coming home, because I was at Lucknow School for 8 years and just loved my experiences there. And that's where I met a lot of you for the first time, or your children, or goes way, way, way back. Sometimes creativity comes to us in very unexpected ways. Such was the case in the creation of this program, celebrating creative women in Maine history. One morning, over a year and a half ago, I was having coffee at my house with my daughter, and the phone rang. And thinking it might be a telemarketer, I glanced at it, but it said SAD 11. And I'm like, when would I be getting a call from SAD 11? Well, sure enough, it was, I answered it, it was the director of Adult Ed at SAD 11 in Gardner, asking me if I would consider putting together a program on this subject. She had found my name on the writers and publishers, and asked if I could do it on creative women in Maine history that were well known, as well as women who were ordinary creative people, as our grandmothers and great aunts. Wow. I said, yes, I guess I could do that. And then I hung up the phone and I said to Cassie, what did I say I could do? And I'm like, oh my gosh. This almost seems monumental. It was the most interesting, intriguing, educational experience to to delve into the history of not only some well-known women and to narrow it down, because I could go on and on, but also there are so many creative women, including everyone here and men too. But this is about women tonight, guys. Sorry. I'm like, you know what? It is time. It's time to do this. It's been a long time coming, so we need to do it. So, for the next few months, that's what I did. And at no other time in history is it more important than right now than to celebrate what women do, what they have done. So tonight's going to be divided into 3 sections. First of all, I have a PowerPoint presentation that will cover some well-known women. The second part of it will be some talents of ordinary, and I hate to call them ordinary, they were extraordinary housewives and domestic engineers that created marvelous, not only needlework, but every aspect of creativity. And then thirdly, I'll share some of the artifacts. We should never, ever underestimate the hidden talents of those traditional housewives. Not enough attention has ever been given to them, and a lot of their heirlooms that are stuck in the back of our bureau drawers and wrapped in tissue paper, and once in a while we take them out and say, this takes me back, this was grandma's. And it's through creativity. There's so much that is involved in creativity. Whether you're sewing or quilting or needlework, or there's design and counting and math and knit one, pro tube, patterns and development and artistic expression. And so we need to shine the spotlight on those extraordinary talents, because a lot of the women who were creating in the early days, they didn't have modern conveniences. They were doing this sometimes by candlelight or by water lamps, and they were doing incredible, really fine needlework, providing for their families. A lot of the times they were household goods. You know, they made rugs. They hooked the rugs and then bedspreads and all kinds of linens. So tonight, what I want to do is place the ordinary women together with the early gender crashes. You know, we didn't have the term back then of breaking any glass ceilings, but because that hadn't been coined yet. But they were so brave to do what they did back in the 1800s. So, and what I want you to do is, after this evening, if you'll share what you've learned with young women in your life. I have here a paper bag and a piece of mica and a clown who has beans in his bottom that my grandmother made. And what I hope you'll do before I'm done this evening is find out what all three of these have in common. You've heard me speak of this author before, but I like some of her quotes. Gloria de Gantan states that commonplace creativity is a basic human need. Now, what she's talking about, and I didn't realize at first, I thought, what does she mean? Commonplace creativity. She's talking about when you were young, we were young, and we went out in the field, and we took dandelions and put them together to make a dandelion necklace and a headband and bracelets. Or we sat with our mothers or grandmothers and she painstakingly tried to teach us how to knit or to bake a cake or biscuits or create a garden plot from scratch. Those commonplace activities that kids need. And what does it do for you when you did it? Because I know you all have created something. There's some joy in there, and you go someplace. When you're so absorbed in what you're doing, some people call it a flow, some people call it you're zoned out, but the outside world fades away, right? And you become one with whatever you're doing, and nothing else, you don't hear anything, nothing else matters. Anyone want to elaborate on that feeling? When you're creating something that it's like, it's just, Alan, you know you do it when you create, when you're hooking rugs, it's just a passion. One of my students many years ago kind of summed it up, and when I looked at him, he was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing, and he said, and I'm like, that says it all, right? I was humming, and it took my memory away. You become so absorbed with what you're doing. So, now, to begin. Creative women and celebrating the creative women in Maine history. And we're going to step back, way back in time. My helper here. Dorothy Murphy Healy. She was an educator, a historian, a curator, and she co-founded the Maine Women's Writers Collection of over 4,000 volumes. She was born in Boothbay, Maine in 1914 and was for 50 years a professor of English at Westport Junior College. The first acquisition to her collection was her own personal volume of a book by Edna St. Vincent Millette, who we're going to visit later, Figs from Thistles, Poems and Sonnets. She also, and I love this part of it, she and her husband lived in New Gloucester, Maine, and they raised annually over 3,000 turkeys. She was also elected in 1948 the secretary of the Maine Turkey Growers Association, and she was inducted into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame in 1993. But she said, I love this quote, that's why I put her first. "I don't think there is any state in the Union that has such creative women than Maine does." And I think it's because we have long, cold winters. Elizabeth Akers Allen. And anytime while I'm doing this, if you have a story about these people, if you have a connection with any of them, just, raise your hand. Elizabeth Akers Allen was born in 1832, and she also wrote under the pen name Florence Percy and Elizabeth Akers. She wrote 4 spuds in the Woods of Maine and several collections of poetry. One of her poems, "Rock Me to Sleep, Mother," was published in the Saturday Evening Post and became popular during the Civil War and set to music. She also wrote for the Portland Daily Advertiser. Throughout the research, I discovered that the Portland paper went through many changes, and often some of these authors or artists had connections to the newspaper, but it changed name, as did Farmington Normal School, Farmington State Teachers College. That it's like, oh my gosh, okay, it was called this, and then it changed to this, and then it changed to this. So I want to read to you a little bit. This is "Rock Me to Sleep." It's quite long, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it kind of, if you go, oh, there it is. "Backward, turn backward, oh time in your flight, make me a child again, just for tonight. Mother, come back from the echoless shore, take me again to your heart as of yore. Kiss from my forehead the furrows of care, smooth the few silver threads out of my hair. Over my slumbers your loving watch keep, rock me to sleep, mother, rock me to sleep." Born in 1832. I have to keep reminding myself of those years. She also wrote, this is my favorite because I love growing morning glories. So she wrote a poem about morning glories. "Oh, dainty daughters of the dawn." Isn't that great? "Most delicate of flowers, how fitly do you come to deck day's most delicious hours. Evoked by morning's earliest breath, your fragile cups unfold before the light has cleft the sky or edged the world with gold. Before luxurious butterflies and moths are yet astir, before the careless has snapped the leaf-hound gossamer, while speared dewdrops yet unquaffed by thirsty insect thieves broider with rows of diamonds the edges of the leaves." Chansonetta Stanley Emmons was born in 1858 in Kingfield, Maine. She attended the Western State Normal School in Farmington to become a teacher, but her love was art. She studied in Boston, but became very well known for her iconic images of New England life and photos that she took of African Americans in South Carolina. She created hand-painted glass slides to project onto a screen in color. She was the author of a little book called The Old Table Chair. Eventually, she lost her ability to hear. Now, if you notice, her middle name is Stanley. Many of her pieces are located at the Stanley Museum in Kingfield, Maine, because her brothers were in the Stanley Steves. Is she a relative of yours, Linda?
Brian's.
Brian's, okay. Because somebody had told me that they were related to the Stolls. So, yeah, fascinating. These are a couple of the images that she had taken, and that's the cover of the old table chair. But I also discovered that there are wonderful places in Maine that you can go on a field trip and take some of these girls, or boys too, that are located in different parts of Maine. This is just one of them that you can visit. If you visit the Stanley Museum, you get to see more of her work there. And there are others that I'll point out along the way. Dorothea Dix, her name has been in the news lately because there is such a focus now, thank goodness, on the mentally ill. And that was the focus of all her work. She was an author, a teacher, a reformer, born in 1802, and she died in 1887. And she was born in Hampton, Maine, and her devotion her entire life was for the welfare of the mentally ill. And because of her work led to widespread reforms. She observed horrific conditions in a Massachusetts prison. And she spent over 40 years of her life lobbying Congress and Canadian legislatures to establish state hospitals for the mentally ill. And because of her work, over 32 institutions in the United States were formed because she was so adamant that things needed to change. She also met with Pope Pius IX, and he ordered the building of a new hospital for the mentally ill after hearing her report. She also became the superintendent of nurses during the Civil War. As an advocate for the mentally ill, she authored many books for treatment and the protection of the insane. And these, the center one, The Conversation of Common Things, is a textbook. Unfortunately, she died in 1887 from malaria in a hospital that she founded. This next one, has anyone, I'm here with Margaret Knight. She was known as a lady inventor. It's like, how did we not know about her? This story just, I was just so intrigued. Because it has something to do with this paper bag. Margaret Knight was born in 1838 and she lived until 1914. She was born in York, Maine. She was known and became known as the lady inventor. She held 27 patents and had over 90 inventions, including a machine to make flat-bottomed paper bags. And it was challenging in the 1800s to be a female and an inventor because no one felt that girls had brains enough to invent anything. Books were written about her life, especially inspiring to young girls. One is Inspiring Maddie, and another one, In the Bag, by Monica Kalman. Now, I'm going to read just a bit of this because it is so good. And if you've never read it, you need to get it. The illustrations are fabulous. But years ago, there were no bags. If you went to the hardware store, the clerk would wrap your tools, your hardware, in a paper, and then he'd fold it so it looked like an ice cream cone. That was your bag. Mr. Maxwell was behind the counter counting out nails. "What do you need the nails for, Maddie?" he asked. "I'm building a sled for my brothers," she replied. Now, 12-year-old Margaret Knight, often called Maddie, was different from most American girls living in 1850. She loved to make things with wood. She made the best kites and sleds. Mr. Maxwell rolled a square of paper into a cone and made the bag. "Bye," he said. Now, Maddie's father died when she was 3, and the family moved to Manchester, New Hampshire, where Maddie's 2 older brothers, Charlie and Jim, worked long, hard days at the cotton mill. And by the time Maddie was 12 years old, she was working there too. But she became very concerned because in the loom, the threads would break off, and when they did, the shuttle would come loose and shoot across the room, and people were getting injured all the time. And so she's like, that shouldn't be happening. So she had a journal. She kept a journal and she would do all these sketches. So she sketched out her idea for how to make us like a stop, something to stop that. So she showed her sketch of a shuttle cover to the factory boss, and he couldn't believe it. That's a great idea, he said. It's called a stop motion device, was her very first invention. She was never paid a penny for it because she was too young to register for a patent. But soon her safety device was attached to all the looms. It didn't take long for folks to learn about this lady inventor. They don't believe it. No mother would allow her daughter to use hammers and machines. Girls don't need to know a thing about machines, interrupted Mrs. Maxwell. They're dangerous. And the illustrations are fabulous too. By 1868, Margaret Knight was 3 years old. Now, most women of the day were married with children, but not Margaret. Instead, she worked at a paper bag factory in Springfield, Massachusetts. And perhaps this is why we didn't hear a lot about her, because she was born in Maine, but she went to New Hampshire and then she went to Massachusetts. But her roots were in Maine. Margaret's prized possession, and I love this, was her toolbox that her father had left her when he died. So she had the tools to make whatever she wanted. So one day she got to work making a flat bottom bag by hand, and she thought, there should be a machine. A narrow bottom bag, why not a flat bottom bag? So she was excited, and for days and days she worked on her design. And she had a journal, and she filled her journal with all kinds of her design. Finally, she said, I've got an idea that will change the way we make paper bags, she said to her boss. And if my idea works, the factory will make more money. More money sounded like music to the ears of her boss. It took Margaret 2 years to make a wooden model that worked, and she worked intently as the machine cut a strip of paper and glued it into a tube. Then it cut the ends and folded it into a square. Presto, she had a flat bottom bag. Margaret was so thrilled that she turned out hundreds of trial bags. She knew her invention was a good one, and it was time for her to patent it. So she hopped on a train and went to Boston, and she found a machine shop there, and she put her design on the counter. But the machinist said, why didn't your husband bring his design in? And she said, because I was the one who designed it. I'm the inventor. And if you notice, this guy right here gives it all away. When it was ready, Margaret took the iron model to the patent office. She got a surprise. A man named Charles had registered that same invention. He had stolen Margaret's design. But she fought it, and she never gave up. And the case went to court. And on the day of the trial, Margaret was nervous. What if no one believed her? But she had all her journals, she had all her sketches. Have you ever heard of a woman inventor? Women don't understand machines, so how could a woman invent this machine which works so well? No one in the courtroom knew a woman inventor. It was Margaret's turn. And she went on to explain how she had started drawing her plans. And she showed her diary that had all her entries in it. It was clear that she knew exactly what she was talking about. And finally, the judge announced the patent for the paper bag machine belongs to Margaret Knight. Her idea was one of simple genius. This was 1870. And she won the case, and she got her patent. So now you know, whenever you see a paper bag, you know who to thank. But it's just a marvelous little book. And she never married or had children, and she spent her whole entire life inventing. Now here's another, a very famous poet that, if you go to Camden, there is a statue of her that overlooks Camden Harbor. Another wonderful field trip to take. She was a famous poet and playwright born in Rockland, Maine in 1892. She died in 1950. She was the author of many books, a Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry, and she was known for her feminine activism also. In 1943, she was awarded the Robert Frost Medal for Literature and her contributions to American poetry. She received the Pulitzer Prize for the Ballad of the Harp's Weaver, in which she coined this famous phrase, "My candy birds and both ends. It will not last tonight, but ah, my foes, and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light." These are just some of her books that she has written. Probably most of you are familiar with Lillian Nordiker, and I was trying to reach a broad range of abilities and artisans, so I felt it was important to include her, because she was one of the most well-known women from Maine who went on, not only nationally but internationally. She was, and this was a quote I found doing research, she was the Beyonce, she was the Lady Gaga of her time. She was an opera singer, but she was so popular. She set a fashion trend because of the clothes that she wore. She was born in Farmington, Maine in 1857. She sang throughout the world in the Metropolitan Opera and performed to sold-out concert halls. She also became a model for Coca-Cola. She did Coca-Cola ads, and I love this. And a lot of the vintage trays and a lot of the metalworks have her picture on it and a poster. And I also read that she loved Farmington. She loved Farmington so much that she bought the very first streetlights for Farmington, which I thought, yeah, good for her. She was also an active supporter of women's suffrage and equal educational opportunities. And what I have, hope I can bring it up quickly here. Not exactly Beyonce. At the time, exactly.
Where next to your mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted you to see her. Oh, geez. Also, another field trip to go on. I've never been there. Tell me about it. Sarah Jewett, Sarah Orne Jewett, author, poet, born in Thurrock, Maine, novelist, short story writer, and poet. She graduated from Thurrock Academy and also wrote under the pen name A.C. Elliott. And she wrote stories for the Atlantic Monthly. She was well known for writing regional fiction. Her dad was a doctor in South Berwick, and so a country doctor The Country of the Pointed Firs is actually a lot about his work. Her writings were known for strong accounts of women's lives and voices. Is that too loud? Okay. Now, if you want to go on a field trip, this was fascinating. It's in South Berwick, right on the main street. You go right past it. This house was built in 1774. They started it, and then it was on hold until after the war, but it remains now as a historical museum. The Sarah Orne Jewett House in South Berwick, Maine. It is absolutely worth the trip there. There are two buildings there. This is called the Tale of Two Houses in South Berwick, Maine, but we didn't go to the second one. We went to the main one, but this is right on the main street of South Berwick. And everything has been kept. This was the original entry, the foyer, when you go in. And now it looks exactly like that. It is just marvelous.
Doesn't look so dingy though.
And every single room has a writing desk in it. This little, really antique writing desk in it. It's, yeah, some of the rooms are dark, but have you been there?
No,
But, it's just,
but the picture looked neat.
yes, but it isn't now. It is just right at the top of the stairs. You can't see it, but this is a big, huge window, and it lets all kinds of light in. There's a hologram of her sitting at one of her writing desks, and it looks like a ghost. It is so well done, though. It's marvelous. She also wrote, these are some of her books, but she also wrote some children's books. The one thing that I discovered about some of her writings is they don't read like a regular novel or like a regular story. She does a lot, and she's well known for this. It's place. She writes a lot about characters and place rather than narrative, rather than story. And some people, Anita Shreve, I believe, wrote the forward, and she didn't like it. She didn't like some of her writing, but she said, "Read it for its beautifully precise language, for its realistic portrayal of women, and for its lovely sense of place. But you have to be careful and patient, because you know how sometimes it's hard to get into a book? That's the way it is. I started reading it, and it's like, oh my goodness." It's, but the detail, the descriptions, the adjectives that she gives, that's what she became known for, but not so much for actually telling the story. So some people didn't like it, but yet it was based on the work of her father. And there's another one. This one is the best stories of Sarah Orne Jewett. And there's lots of different stories in here. That these are more, they're still character descriptions rather than stories, but there's more of a story to these, and there's quite a good collection in here. So, but she was very well known. Just look at all her books. Mildred Burridge. Anyone ever heard of her before? Me neither. I hadn't either. And she was born in Portland. And she's actually buried there too in the cemetery where sometimes I walk over there to the cemetery. She was a Maine artist and a preservationist. She was born in Portland in 1890 and lived until 1983. And some of her work was actually on exhibit at the Portland Museum of Art, but this was long before I knew her. But she later settled in Wisconsin. She embraced the form of mica painting. Therefore, that's why I showed you a piece of mica. Now you get it. She sprinkled pieces of mica in some of her paintings. She also painted on mica, which I'd love to have seen them. And because of that, she received international attention. She also did recruiting posters for World War I. She founded the Maine Art Gallery in Wisconsin, another place to go. But this next tidbit just fascinates me. She promoted the very first Maine craft exhibition. Just look at where it is now, in Maine and across the country. Craft shows are everywhere. And what it enables is it enables a lot of ordinary women to be able to make an extra income, to really create and sell their artwork to tourists. And so she would be so pleased at what she started. She was also named the director of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And this next slide shows, this one showed up better on the internet, but it had, you can see the little sprinkles in it, so I'm sure if you saw it in an art gallery, you could see this spot. I love the other two. They're just, the colors and the garden, and just the homeness, the warmth that are in her paintings. You all know, I'm familiar with this next lady, Margaret J. Smith. So I had to include her. She was born in Skowhegan, Maine in 1897 and lived until 1995. She was the first woman elected to Congress in both the Maine House of Representatives and the Senate. She was the first woman to serve in both those houses. And the first woman in 1964 to become nominated for the President of the United States, but lost to Barry Goldwater.
Norma?
Yes.
My dad was a veterinarian and took care of her cats.
Really? All right. I love that.
Yeah.
See, that's great.
So we had connections. And
Yes, you did. Yes. Did they wear little red noses? Because she did. She was known for wearing every day she wore.
My story about her was she had a place down on the coast, on a peninsula right across from where we were working at Sebasco Lodge.
Oh.
And they had a launch down there, and they'd take the guests out for rides. And the captain who drove the launch was an old character, and he had a hookup with folks that worked for the senator every time. So he'd take the boat over into the by her house, swing around, and he'd yell out, "Hiya, Margaret!" And then one of the maids would come out and wave at them.
Oh, that's great.
So there she is. She comes out all the time.
She actually worked on a bill to establish the waves, and every time I had to stop and look to see what this letter stands for. Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service, the women's branch of the Naval Reserves. She gained national acclaim for her challenge of Joseph McCarthy on the Senate floor, and she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1989. The next two people that I want to mention, I'm going to just pause right here. I don't have their profiles up there, but I have some connections with them, and they were both from Gardner, or in connections to Gardner. So that was the first place that I did this program, so I wanted to include them. And I'm sure you probably might all have this cookbook, or one of these cookbooks. Cooking Down East by Marjorie Standish.
I still use it.
Yes, me too.
That edition.
And her other one, Keep Cooking, The Maine Way, by Marjorie Standish. Well, she was a Maine teacher, author of Maine cookbooks. She was born in 1908 and died in 1998. She was born in Brunswick. Put up there, what? Okay. She graduated from Farmington Normal School with a bachelor's degree in home economics. She taught home ec in several Maine high schools. She later moved to Gardner and began writing her Cooking Down East column in the Portland Sunday Telegram. She started in 1948. My mom still has clippings that she cut out of some of those recipes. But it wasn't until 1969 when she published that first cookbook. And then 4 years later, she published Keep Cooking, The Maine Way. Well, I found something in the Bethel Citizen a couple of weeks ago under the back pages. It says, 80 years ago, Mrs. Marjorie H. Standish of the Central Maine Power Company was conducting a cooking school in Odeon Hall. Talk about connections. Yeah, this was just recently.
Yeah.
April 4th. So I thought, that is timely. The other person is Dorothy Clark Wilson. Dorothy Clark Wilson was a famous author. She was born in Gardner, Maine in 1904, and she graduated from Coney High and Bates College. She was a famous author, wrote many novels and biographies, including one of her most famous, Dr. Ida Scudder. Now, Dr. Ida was a famous surgeon and medical missionary. And Dorothy Wilson traveled to India and traveled around with Dr. Ida. And this book is about that travel. It's very well, it's old. It belonged to my mother. And when I was in high school, either junior or senior year, we had to do a biography. And Mom suggested that I read this. And at the time, she told me the connection, but I didn't pay attention. Or I forgot at the time what that connection was. But it wasn't until later, when I was reading through her diaries, that I found the personal connection. Her husband, Dorothy Clark Wilson's husband, was a minister. Reverend Elwyn Wilson. He married my parents. There it was in her diary. It's like, oh my gosh, no wonder she wanted me to read. And I did a book report on this book. So she won the Westminster Fiction Award in 1949 for this book, The Prince of Egypt. Anyone know what movie was based on that book?
Arabia?
The Ten Commandments. But I read that she was not happy. She didn't like the screen adaptation of the book. So she was never very happy. So now what I want to do is move on to the talents of ordinary women. And you know hundreds and thousands of those women that I could have included. Ordinary women had extraordinary talents within their environments, creating their own clothes, linens, decor, toys, all while tending to domestic chores, and usually lots of kids, big families. Sterile soil and harsh climate are first rate for raising men and women, for they are the staple produce of Maine. Don't you love that? Long winters are powerful educators. From the Maine Reader, Harriet Beecher Stowe, of course. Long, snowy, cold, snow days we can create. Love snow days. Long has the artistry of Maine women been wrapped in tissue paper and tucked away. It's time to bring forth these heirlooms and celebrate the talents of their creators. This sampler, my sister Ethel found in her attic. It was made by Louisa Millett in 1930 and found in her attic. And there was a time, many, many years ago, when girls did not go to school at first. They stayed home, but they were taught, one of the things that they were taught to do is do a sampler. They did the alphabet and the numbers on these beautiful, exquisite pieces that are prized possessions, and a lot of times they're handed down as a family heirloom. This one was made by Irene Hutchison. She was born in Albany. She lived on Mill Hill in Bethel. I don't know if any of you remember, but going down over Mill Hill, before you get to the bridge, there was a big, huge Victorian house, 3-story house. And she lived there. And she did a lot of creative work, and especially needlework. And she gave me this piece that she did. So I just love it. Dan Nickerson told me about this exquisite piece of art that's no longer there. But in her house on Chapman Street in Bethel, when she grew up, her aunt, Mara, painted this wall. Did anyone ever see it? Well, we used to see it because my daughter had piano lessons there. And it used to be in the house, and it covered the whole wall. And you can see where she signed it. It's gone. She said the new one was painted over. My grandmother, now you see the connection to this is so old. My grandmother made one for 4 of us girls, and they do, so they could sit up, there's names here. Now, some of them that she made, they were black. They were made of black material, but we were thrilled. We were absolutely thrilled. And my grandmother had so many kids, and she was always cooking, and I can't believe she had time to do this, and most of it is all hand sewn. And this piece was made by Connie Wheeler in 1948. You said you were related to some of the Wheelers in West Bethel? Well, this lady created this, and it's just beautiful. She even has, she has these little ones. But, sorry guys, but there's such detail. It's just marvelous. Her daughter gave it to me. Maya Joyen, she was a teacher, and she lived on Zongo Pond. Her husband used to be a mailman in Portland, and they moved to Albany, and so she was my wonderful neighbor, and funny, and very creative. But she gave this to me.
Is it made of porcelain? What's the?
No, it's not.
So she bought the face?
This whole doll.
She made the whole doll?
No, the doll is plastic.
Okay.
But she dressed. But the whole ensemble she crocheted. Toe painting. Toe painting and stenciling. Toe painting is folk art of painting on metal and wood. And again, this piece was done by one of my mom's cousins who was born in Marceau, Maine. And she spent most of her life in Connecticut. But in her house, she had the whole room, it was just, the walls were covered with stenciled and toe paintings that she did. That was one of them, and this is another one that, it's just got all this delicate, it's kind of gold on it, but stenciled. And then the other piece again was done by Dana's creative aunt on there. It was a grid box. And my neighbor, she could do the tatting. It was incredible. Just delicate pieces that you wouldn't want to put glue nails on these. They're just But she did it endlessly. And David's grandmother, she also did the piano scar. It's so fun. Hooked rugs were very, very popular. One of the most famous women in Maine who did it, she was from Dixville, Lucy Barnard, and her paintings her rugs are priceless, and it hung in the New York City Metropolitan Museum of Art. This one was, it's so old and so worn because it was used. My grandmother used it, my mother threw it down on the floor up in the attic, and it was just like this whole thing. But I saw it, and I called up Ellen one day, and I said, "How do you clean an old hooked rug?" And she said, "You take it out in the snow, and you lay it in the snow, and that's what I did." But it's really old. I just love it. I hang it on the wall, but I mean, this thing is so old. But yeah, it's been through a lot. But I thought it was just so unusual. And the middle one, for over 50 years, this was on a loom, 3/4 completed. Maybe some of you have heard this story before. It was up in my mom's attic, and it's like, what do you do with it? It's on the loom, it's not done, but in the process of moving, what did I find? A bag with all the cut pieces of wool that matched that. And who's going to be able to find wool? And now, to match it, there they were. So with the help of my sister Dottie and my Aunt Evelyn, I was going to give it to my aunt, but little did I know they fixed it to give to me. Of course. So I love it. But look at, this is incredible. This one is just, and if you do any research on her, I mean, her rugs are just, they're marvelous. They are, they're massive.
We have our modern day hooker right out there.
We do. We do. So, creativity. The skills are so broad. Rug making, gardening, painting, embroidery, knitting, stenciling, photography, cross stitch, quilting, rug braiding, sewing, crocheting, writing, appliques, on and on and on. I think that's, oh no. You all remember Helen Orton, and I love the one the sketch that she did of the Kalman. It's just one of my favorites. She also did the Convent Church. She also did the Middle Innerville Meeting House, which they're just.
On Sunday River Bridge, I had one.
Do you? Yeah, she was.
And we still use her logo on all of our church stuff.
Yes, yeah. And she taught kindergarten at Ethelbisbeth at one point. And, yeah, she was very talented. Again, this is a relative of Janice, Angelia Maria Riggs Stephen was up top, but look at her marvelous paintings that she did. These, my mom made this, but this was very popular. It's known as chicken scratch, or it's also Indian lace, but this type of pattern is called chicken scratch. It was very popular back in the late 50s, early 60s. These people were making these pillows. Very special.
When did your mom live in Unity?
Pardon?
When did your mom live in Unity?
She was born in Unity and raised there on a farm, and she was one of these, she wanted to learn all these, whatever was in vogue, if it was the Artax. Anyone remember the Artax? It was called Liquid Embroidery.
Yes.
And they had parties. She did it. She did cake decorating. She did glass etching. She did
Ceramics.
ceramics. She made trees and all kinds. She made toys. She took a toy making class, and if it was happening, she did it. I'm glad she did it. Now this piece, I have no idea who made it. So this is to the unknown woman who created this. It is absolutely spectacular. I love this. Look at the work that's in there. This is part of the black work. There's blue work and red work, and this is black work. But look at the waves in the shell. It's just
embroidery?
Yes, yes. Look at it. It's just.
Oh, it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, my
Isn't that
God.
something?
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Wow.
It's like,
Yeah, that's.
and I got it at a yard sale.
Oh,
But I had to bring it because it's like, I don't know who did it, but it is absolutely just a piece of work. It's just incredible. Is any wonder we celebrate this one? This was a piece that David's grandmother was also, she was marvelous. She could do so many work with women, the cut work and the smocking and just all kinds of needlework, knitting, crocheting, and this is bringing that piece. A lot of work. That's pulled work. They pull it. This would not be complete without honoring the people who made quilts, because they were so they made them. They were useful and absolutely beautiful. Now this first one, I didn't bring it. My cat owns it, but he doesn't. It's wrapped in plastic because I don't want him getting hair all over it. Because it was made by Bertha Burrs Kimball at the age of 13 in 1892. She was my great aunt, but I love the colors in it. This one that's called the hole in the barn door pattern. And I love that design. But again, this was in our attic, covering a window to keep the cold out. And it was just hanging there. It was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. The same way with the log pattern. This David's grandmother had that. And it had birch places in it. And so I mended it by hand. And it was the work that they did. It's just, we have to celebrate it.
Plus they use the scraps.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. Most of you knew Nell Valentine. Well, Nell Valentine, she did it all. She did, the snowflakes is probably one of her most famous works that she did. Every year at the Congregational Church, she would have these snowflakes and she mounted them. She would mount them on paper, so they really stand out. All different patterns, but it was like, gotta have a Nell Valentine snowflake to hang on your tree. And at Christmas time now, they're on display in a glass cabinet, and they're just beautiful. And our mom also made some of these too. But she did rug braiding, and she made quilts. And
Started quilting when she was 3 years old.
I believe, yeah. The only thing I could not find out about her is was she born in Maine. That's a mystery. And I tried to go online and I tried to check the archives and I couldn't find it. So I'm not sure it belongs to me, but
Close enough.
yeah. But she was in Bethel long enough, so she made an impact on a lot of lives with her artwork. So she qualifies.
She tried to teach me the tap ones.
Did she? And you too?
For a little while.
Good for you.
Teach him to tap.
Before I end my program, I came across this just recently in a magazine. I have to share it with you. Canadian researchers found that pressing pause for 10 minutes between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. to do something creative sharpens your focus by as much as 32%. Creativity gives your prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for goal management, a brief break to recharge. So when you return to whatever you're doing, your attention is renewed. The importance of creativity, once again, right in the forefront here. I have for you, if anyone would like it, a bookmark. An essential aspect of creativity is not being afraid to fail. So, isn't that the truth? So, you are welcome to have one of these. I also have, this is just an outline of some of the women that I highlighted tonight. I urge you to take some field trips, take your grandsons, granddaughters, other women, and spread the word that Women in Maine did marvelous, marvelous things, and we need to, it's time they were really brought those works of art were brought to the forefront. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.